And now live from wherever Braden lives, somewhere in Austin, Texas, it's AWS Howdy partner. Take it away, Braden.
Howdy, everybody. How's everybody doing? We're happy to be here on this Wednesday afternoon. Today, we have Josh and Stuti with us. Say hello, you two. And well, there you go. So welcome to Howdy Partner. So if this is your first time joining us, Howdy Partner is a weekly Twitch series highlighting AWS Partner Network partners. And episodes are hosted by AWS Partner Solutions architects such as myself and such as Stuti, whose goal is to help you add new tools and skills while having a great time watching the stream. Okay, so it's designed to help AWS cloud community, both experts and individuals new to the cloud, learn how to leverage APN partner solutions. And so that's why we have Josh here with us today. And luckily enough, we have Stuti here, who's going to actually help introduce us to the topic today. So Stuti, you want to go ahead and take it away?
Of course. Thank you, Braden, for a quick round of introduction. Hey, everyone. I'm Stuti Deshpande. I'm a partner solution architect at AWS. Well, you know, Braden, we all are living in a generation where data is the new currency, as it is termed. The amount of data that is being generated every day is huge. It's enormous, and it's growing exponentially. You know, and we are in the kind of midst of a titanic shift where we're seeing that large organizations are moving to cloud to leverage the benefits of agility, scale, and the cost-effective benefits of cloud in order to store this huge amount of data. You know, but the challenge is not only limited to storing this huge amount of data, but also about the type, the different variety, and the quality of data that is being generated. So, you know, today we are actually going to talk about how you can leverage and get the value out of this huge amount of data that is being generated. Consider any vertical industries, right, like banking or finance or healthcare. They have so many different sources of data that is being generated and at a huge velocity, and the data that is being generated is of wide variety. And we are actually in this generation talking about 4 V's of big data, that is abbreviated for velocity, variety, volume, and veracity. So the question is, what do we do with this data, right? Like how it can be proved to be useful for businesses. Well, believe it or not, but this new powerful form of currency, which is data, is radically redefining the way people are doing businesses. Now, organizations want to extract the meaningful insight out of this raw data to drive some business decisions. You know, they can get some feedback from this raw data. They can modernize their processes. They can do some kind of innovation. They can accelerate the pace of innovation in order to have some new processes in place and also improve their customers' experiences. As AWS, we are so customer obsessed. We also want our partners to kind of, accelerate the pace of innovation and speed up the delivery so that they can also have a good customer experience on their end. And now, more than ever, we are actually observing organizations moving towards this data-driven and data-centric culture. So you might be wondering, okay, there is a huge amount of data. There's a wide variety of data coming at different velocity. Now, how can we actually leverage some benefits out of it, right? So the first step is to actually integrate all this different kind of data into a single source of truth. That could be your central repository of storing this wide variety of data, right? So the first step is actually integrating this data to unleash its full potential. And how you can do that is actually either connecting to these different data sources or integrating the data from all these different sources of data. When companies have all their data in one place, they're able to find the most important and valuable insights out of this data. With Informatica that we have today in our show, with their solution for cloud integration services, you can actually connect to hundreds of sources of data It could be a cloud source, it could be on-premises or SaaS applications, and they have so much of intelligence and automation built within their services that it really does not matter that what type of data that you're connecting to, what pattern or what format your data is in. So what I'm actually talking about right now is a process that is involved in extracting the meaningful insight out of this raw data. So first you extract the data, then you transform the data. And what exactly means? So transformation is something that you transform your raw data into a format that is readable by any kind of analytical tools, or you can derive some benefits or some value out of that raw data. So you need to have it in a format that can be consumed or readable by analytical tools, right? So that is where the transformation phase comes into the picture. Now, with Informatica, with their tools, with integration tools, and all the features and functionalities that they provide out of the box, you can build all these different kinds of data integration workloads and ETL tools with some really complex transformations built inside their solutions. So I'm not going to further reveal what are the different features and functionality, and that's why we have Josh here today. So take it away, Josh. We are so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much, Sudhi, and thank you, Braden. I'm excited at the opportunity, and you hit the nail on the head. My name is Josh Earhart, and I'm the Director of Strategic Ecosystem Architecture Solutions. So we abbreviated that with C's, so that way you don't have to say that whole mouthful. And my main goal is to help setting others up for success, be it developers, be it data consumers, be it citizen integrators, because there is a lot of challenges in the data. People can be what's called data dumb, where they have too much data, they have a data swamp, and they basically don't even know how to mine it to get value out of it. And you hit on another good point. Some of the common challenges, especially for the younger developers out there, there's been a path that we've seen how the market has shifted, how the development skills have shifted. And I was wondering, would it be okay if I shared a slide here quick just to kind of walk through kind of that scenario that we're seeing?
Of course.
Absolutely. Let's see it.
All right. Just one sec. And there we go. Can you see my screen?
Wait for a ghost host. There we go.
All right. So to kind of touch on Sudhi's point, many years ago, there wasn't that many vendors in the game for what we call enterprise data management. When we look at the pillars of enterprise data management, there were developers in each phase of these different applications. Well, in some cases, there was vendors that hit all of the pillars, and it became not much of a challenge to have the skill set to sustain those applications. But as needs evolved, as the businesses needed access to more data, to more insight, more opportunity, you had this huge proliferation of all these different applications that IT struggled to sustain. You had what was called shadow IT. And what happens is, for many young developers, I was included, I built these amazing applications. And what happened is it's different syntax with each application. And it's almost like knowing, Chinese, French, Italian, Spanish, English, all these different languages just to execute on these different applications. So it truly became a developer's world. And now we're in this current state where it's hard for many customers to navigate to value, let alone developers, right? Which application should I learn? Should I learn R? Should I learn Python? Should I learn Java? What coding language should I get into? And what we quickly found was you can code something 1,000 different ways and not be wrong. But the challenge is that next developer that comes into play, they struggle to see what that first developer did, and they tend to append more code, and it quickly becomes unsustainable and inefficient. So you see many customers and many developers struggling to how to navigate that value. And that's where we come into play. We're seeing common patterns, right? So as Studi said, it's hard for them to find the data assets. It's hard for them to find something that's going to be trusted and of value, especially when they're doing their cloud journey. And the other part is low code development. What's a simplified way for any developer to get started because it's not rocket science moving that integration. Yes, the business rules can provide a high level of complexity, but we've had 25 plus years of experience to develop wizards and templates, not to constrain you, but to provide you an opportunity to standardize and set your methodology and framework up for success. And then ultimately building that trust. Because when customers are leveraging S3, when they're leveraging Redshift on the AWS ecosystem, it's really becoming a data foundation. And with all foundations, you really need to have that stability and build that trust. And that's what we're partnering and complementing the AWS ecosystem to do. So I know that was a bit much there, but any questions on that?
Yeah, chats. If you have any questions, drop them in the chats, and Stu and I will get them to Josh.
Excellent. So one thing I want to kind of talk a little bit about real quick, and I'm going to get into a demo, but I kind of want to level set for the audience, because sometimes visualizations speak 1,000 words, right? You probably heard that many times. For many of our customers, when they're on their journey, they need that ability to have what's called a governed enterprise data management strategy. For many young developers out there, just like I struggled to really get, I knew how to move A to B and, B to C, but I was looking at the trees and not really focused on the forest. And a lot of times when we go in development, we don't really know the quality of that data that we're bringing in. Harkening back to what Studi said, right? Hey, I brought all this data in. Uh-oh, we have data orphans. We have inconsistencies. We have outliers. How can I mitigate that before I even start my development? Well, where many of our customers begin, and it's also, I think, a great step for many developers, is discovering that current state, right? What's the quality of my existing environment today that I can see if there's going to be any potential problems as I build a solution? So what I'm showing you in this illustration here is what was traditionally known as an enterprise data warehouse, which was a data foundation for on-premise solutions, is where companies would bring in multiple data sources and try to centralize them and get a bigger picture. But as Studi related to, data volumes are growing, the speed to get the insight is there, that didn't become sustainable. And that's where the AWS ecosystem comes in. It offers the opportunity for them to expand at the speed of data and to have that scalability. So for me, even before our solutions came in to have this automated discovery, I would always assess that current state. I would see how they're doing it, and then try to identify their data targets, right? What do they view as an asset? Is a customer an asset? Is a product an asset? And then from there, I knew where they wanted to get to. So, but for many organizations, this is a plane in flight. They can't take that plane down. So how do they make that quick shift to that new technology? Well, they need to spin up that new AWS instance and copy over that existing environment, so then end users can those data consumers can take advantages of those new technologies. But in that process, we have to translate what's called tribal knowledge to enterprise knowledge. And I'm sure a lot of you can relate to that, right? You do something for 20 plus years or even 5 years, you know it instinctively. It's not written down, but you always have to explain it to the next person to be able to understand. Well, as a developer, I learned quickly in my career, someone told me that's job security, right? Just keep it to yourself. Don't let anybody know what you're doing. That's job security. And for me, my passion is data. I wanted to move on to the next bigger and better thing. And the only way you can really do that is having that transparency so that everyone understands and the person behind you can pick it up, and then you can move on to the next big thing. So with this journey that we're seeing for many people, now taking the pressure off the developers to say, hey, you got your new tools, you got to leverage the new AWS analytics, right? Now we can migrate appropriately. We can take advantage of that cloud ecosystem. I mean, the fast mass ingestion capabilities of S3 is a game changer, right? When I was traditionally doing development on on-premise environments, setting up, the Hadoop clusters, the data lakes, it was a nightmare. It was a maintenance nightmare. So harkening back to what Studi said about cost savings, it's not just the infrastructure cost, but it's the troubleshooting cost. It's the staffing cost to be able to do that. And AWS saves a lot of that time. And you're able to take that ecosystem and help. And you'll see why you don't want to persist these legacy solutions, why you want to take advantages of these wonderful features, because what you realize, and I'll give you a real world case, someone had 900 different databases they wanted to migrate to the cloud. And it was 15 plus terabytes of data, and there was a lot of sensitive data in there. They didn't know where to start. They didn't know how to begin. And we quickly helped them discover those data assets. If they would have just lifted and shifted all of that and moved it to the cloud, right, it would have took them 2 years at an estimated cost of $300,000 a month. They would have been able to do it quickly, but was it something sustainable for them to move forward? It wasn't. And so this approach helps them realize, and now is the time to do it right. It gives the opportunity to say, hey, I know we didn't do it the best way when we originally built it, but now we're going to eliminate redundancy. We're going to, deprecate duplicate efforts, and we're going to do it the right way and take advantage of that ecosystem. And one quick thing, I like to dumb this down even more, just so everyone can kind of see, because I think of developers, especially when they're starting out, a lot of the times they start out as analysts, right? Hey, we need, Joe to come over in accounting. We need Jill to help work out in sales. And a lot of the times they're tethered to that data collection application. And what I mean by that is they learn their Hyperion tool, they learn their CRM tool, and they're able to extract all the data that comes out of that application. But as Studi said earlier on, how do they bring all of that together? And that's a common challenge for many developers early in their career, because they're focusing on each tree, and then maybe there's another person that's focusing on the forest, right? What's the best path to bring it together? And if you live in this siloed integration world, you find there's a lot of redundancies. You're spending more time compiling and validating data. Someone could be doing it in Python here, R here, C#, so on and so on. Like I said, all those different languages. And by the time that the analytics team gets to compile all of that together, it could already be a month behind. And there could be a lot of duplications that now management's put in a position to have to summarize it to executives. So not a very reactive state. And sadly, this is a common state for many people out there, both customers and developers. Where we try to assist is exactly how I laid out. We have tools, Enterprise Data Catalog, that can automate that current state, that can assess that operational analytics, the tactical analytics, right? What did we do yesterday? What are we doing tomorrow? And see where that source of truth is. Mine those data assets. And then from there, port that over to the new AWS cloud ecosystem, taking advantages of the technology that's there today and helping the data consumers, the citizen integrators, take advantage of that. And then you build to that final end state where you've eliminated the redundancy, you've eliminated the manual effort, and now you as a developer can take on the next challenge of data science and algorithms and really driving that market. But the one thing I will say to you, a game changer for me as a data architect, I had onshore and offshore developers, and I would set standards and principles. And even though the Enterprise Data Catalog gave me the capability to get that current state assessment, I also used it to monitor my developers to ensure that they're adhering to our framework and methodology. So it became a great sustainable asset for me to truly have that understanding of my enterprise data management. So I know that was a lot of slides there. I'll stop sharing, but Studi or Braden, any questions coming in? Anything that anybody wants me to speak to?
This is amazing, Josh. I mean, we are actually connecting to different sources of data, which could be of any format, and kind of creating catalogs so that, analytics team can quickly get access to that kind of data, and having all kinds of data in just one single source, and how efficiently and quickly that can be done. That's pretty amazing to know.
Something I will say, Josh, is that it is pretty amazing how you can. I think it's hard to understand how difficult it can be to aggregate all of this data in a clean way, right? I think a lot of people on the stream, perhaps not, but raise your hand in the chat if you have had this experience where a supervisor or boss comes to your desk and asks, hey, can you just make me a quick report real fast? And of course, in the back of your mind, with an understanding of all the different databases that go together, you understand that there's going to be some messy inner joins. There's going to be some large tables you're going to have to sift through. You're going to have to figure out how to get rid of all the nulls. And so understanding how big of an issue this is, it's again, it's very impressive. I'm very excited for what you're about to share with us, Josh.
Thank you. Yeah, and Braden, he mentioned this on the post, if you follow Braden, that he was a former Power Center developer. And for many of you that may not know or be familiar with Informatica, we developed an ETL tool 25 plus years ago. And Braden was fortunate enough to work on it many years ago. And it was a good tool. It satisfied the use cases that were out there. I mean, it's still a good tool today. But rather than persist that technology to the cloud, just like what I told you guys, is we extended that tool for the cloud. And what I mean by that is we rebuilt it in a microservices fashion to be a scalable, sustainable model. And we wanted to simplify it to help you, many of the developers and the customers out there, really have that enterprise transparency and focus on the hard parts of data, which is the data model, right? Finding the right assets and validating it, getting the source of truth. So what I'd like to do is go into the demo if that's possible. Is that too soon, or is that okay?
No, absolutely. Let's jump right into it. I think you even had a couple people asking, hey, let's see this already. They're excited.
Excellent. I switched screens, but I want to make sure, are you able to see the login screen that I'm showing now, or is it still the PowerPoint?
Yeah, no, we see that login screen. You're good to go.
Excellent. So the first thing I'm going to show you guys is the Informatica's Intelligence Cloud Service. And when I show you this interface, you're going to see a modular, highly intuitive application. And I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't go through training. I learned it intuitively through the tool set, and I'll show you how I did it. There's a step for many new developers that we bring them to help them start small, scale fast, and think big. So the first thing that you do is we have a login site. It's available. You can trial it for 30 days. It's on our homepage. You can download it. It's very, very easy. But you log in, and for many corporations and enterprises, they can use their single sign-on to have seamless login as well. So I'm going to log into the application, and the first thing that you're going to see is these different modules. And these different modules have, I always say, yes, we can do it, but should we do it? I don't like conflating different architectural intent. And what I mean by that is, if you're familiar with the old data modeling concepts of Bill Inman, Third Normal Form, and Ralph Kimball, the star schemas, both served a purpose, right? Inman's methodology was to expand rapidly. It was designed for data collection systems, ERPs, and CRMs to be able to capture data effectively and efficiently. But unfortunately, there were thousands and thousands of tables that it became hard to report off of. You really had to understand that architecture, whereas Kimball condensed it and brought it together to make it easily consumable. That same concept exists in our platform, right? When I talk about data integration, and any one of these modules you hover over, it tells you the intent, and I can learn more directly from the application. But data integration is designed to do that large-scale integration, bring in large data sets. API integration, right, is designed for what we call data enrichment. I relate it to just-in-time inventory. If you've ever developed with APIs, right, the challenge is I could try to pull mass amounts with an API integration, but I run that at the risk of bringing down that application, because many of those applications have governors on it, right? They're designed to collect data, take inputs. And if I bog that down by trying to pull that data out at the same time, I do it at the detriment of that application. So that's where batch integration says, hey, I'm going to do a nightly load, or I'm going to do an hourly load, do these big pulls. But when I need just-in-time inventory or a status check, then I can bring that data in via application integration. And you can see there's other modules here, data profiling capabilities, data quality capabilities, mass ingestion, which is a huge opportunity for many S3 data consumers, because it really helps you do that major lift quite effectively and quickly into the application. So again, that's just kind of the lay of the land. I'm going to go into data integration.
Josh, we have a quick question before you click into anything. One was, can ML help with the noise data or not? And is that implemented in any of these tools? These sections here, I assume, is what they're asking.
Yes. So we have a couple different ways to do that, and we use machine learning and artificial intelligence across our different tool sets. One of the coolest things that we have is there's a couple different features where we use machine learning. We have machine learning in our intelligent structure discovery. So if you look, like I said, we have all these pre-built wizards. We have the ability to do slowly changing dimensions. We have the ability to do cleansing. But one of the coolest things is our intelligent structure model discovery. So you think about noise. Noise could be anything from, hey, we're getting extra values in a phone number. We're getting, inconsistent patterns in a data set. Or, hey, I got a XML file. I got a JSON file, and I don't understand the hierarchy. The great thing about our tool set, and we have something called Claire, it's our artificial intelligence. If you pick that file and you upload it, it will discover the structure. So you can quickly see if it's an partially structured asset. Not only can you see, what noise potential is in there, but you can parse out those key fields and then leverage our data quality solution to extract those different patterns that you view as noise, right? Extra characters, inconsistency, data outliers, and we have many features, everything from building rules to parsing out to verifying to cleansing to running against data dictionaries. Did that answer the question, or did I go a little too far? Hopefully they responded.
Looks like that answered it. Thank you, Josh.
Yeah, yep. Thank you, Josh.
No worries. So one of the cool things that I want to show you here is, as a developer, I was constantly moving at the speed of data. It was like every day I had to go in and develop something new, and this is your designer palette as a developer. So when I go into the data integration module, this is kind of step one for many of our developers. And the cool thing was I could always see my recent assets. This is my dashboard. I can see what I worked on recently, when I last accessed it. Are all of the assets I created currently valid, or is there anything that's invalid? And has there been any unsuccessful runs? So right from the get-go, I can see what I most recently worked on, and I don't have to go searching for it. I can also see that my execution engines are up and running. So I have cloud hosted, or I have AWS secure agent that can execute. I can have multiple options in there in terms of execution. But the cool thing here for developers, a lot of times you're trying to figure out how to start. How do I build my infrastructure? And we have an organization here that allows you to organize your assets in any way possible. And what I mean by that is we have the concept of projects and folders. So if you think about any given organization, you may have a sales department, you may have a finance department, maybe you want to structure your engagement that way. Or maybe you want to be able to do it by, this is our cloud data warehouse, this is our data lake integrations, and so on. And you can click into those structures and develop folders and do your hierarchies. Well, when you have that kind of different hierarchy, maybe you want to see all of your customer integrations across all those different projects. Here, this is a training interface. So you can see all the different projects that it's like, oh, I don't want to click in each one to look for an asset. Well, I can just start typing in something, and it does a metadata search, and it brings up those assets that relate to it. Or if I know it by the asset type, like, oh, I built the task flow, I built the mapping, I can easily search that way. Or better yet, I want to see all of the customer tags, right? I can just simply click on those assets, and now I have them readily available. So multiple different ways to be able to slice and dice and get started into that development lifecycle. Now, the one thing I do want to show you, which is kind of the game changer here, is this data catalog. For many customers, you think about Amazon.com, your shopping experience, right? I think I know what I want. I'm going to type in something, and then maybe it'll make a recommendation. That's the same concept with our enterprise data catalog. So on that journey where I told you, hey, you want to be able to type in something and look for it, we scan that current state environment to see the quality of those assets. And then a data steward collaborates on the data catalog and says, hey, these are going to be the certified assets. You can go ahead and develop it. So as a developer, for me, that's huge. That saves so much time, and I can ensure that I have trusted data. So all I have to do is I'll type in customer. It'll bring up a search result. And so here's all of my records. And I say, well, I know it's Oracle. All these different data types that I can pick from. And I know it's Oracle. But we have so many different instances of Oracle. What's the resource name, right? I can scroll down and I can see what the resource names are. And there's a lot here. Well, I'm just going to sort by name. And I know it's retail person. That was the name of the Oracle instance, right? And I know that it's a table. So I select that, and now I've narrowed down my search. Business customer. Okay, I think that's the asset that I want, but let me make sure. I click into it, and it brings me to the enterprise data catalog. And immediately I see, great, it's a certified asset. Perfect. This is what I want. I can see the ratings on it, and I can read those reviews to ensure if there's anything that in terms of gotchas. I can right away see the different data domains that the artificial intelligence and the machine learning executed on the scan, because sometimes field names don't indicate what that data is. As a developer, you may start out and get flat files and inconsistencies, screen scrape reports, right? Our data domains, it comes with 160 plus pre-built data domains, scans it not only on data type, but pattern and reference tables. So we have these algorithms built to scan through this data set and tell you what the recommendations of this data set is. So even if the corresponding name doesn't match, we can at least find really what this is. And right from there, I can see also too, is there any sensitive data here? It only shows me a couple. I'll click into columns and see if there's any social security numbers or credit cards that I should be aware of. But this is a holistic kind of interface of this data set. I know who the data owner is, who the steward is, anybody that's following. You can also add your own custom attributes, and I can see the reviews. As an architect, this was huge because the data steward would tell me this is a source of truth, but then I would go into the columns and I'd see the profiling results and I'd say, oh, I'm not seeing a unique ID, or, there's more values than expected. And we can collaborate right here on this interface. So I can scroll down and see, all right, any sensitive data domains that I see in here. Oh, there's social security number. Is that something I want to bring in, or is that something I want to be able to restrict? The other thing that I want to quickly see is, are there any keys, right? If I'm going to bring this in, was any key inferred, right? So this tells me that the underlying data set has inferred keys, it just wasn't set. So I can quickly see customer ID is going to be my natural key for this table set. And then I can go in here further and check the quality of this data, right? Ooh, okay, gender, let's see what kind of data type this is. So I click into it and I can see, oh, this is good. I got male and female. I don't have any other expected values in there. But then I can also see, is there any other similar sources, right? I got customer, valid customer, person. This has done a domain similarity discovery through our machine learning to say, hey, these other data sets are very, very similar, right? Do we have a source of truth issue? Do we have duplications? Do I need to go in there and see if this is more of a trusted source? So all the tools, not only at your interface to be able to understand and look at, but for you to be able to collaborate with your team, with your data subject experts. So the other cool thing is too, right, what's the data type? This is what the source data type says, but this is what we're detecting. So it really gives you that health check of that data before you even begin your integrations. The other thing, you look at country, right? Is this standardized? Uh-oh, we don't have a consistent pattern, right? There's not, so when I want to consolidate and merge records, the key step is I have to standardize that data before I start merging data sets together. Here, I know there's all these different variations of the United States. I can further see that there's different patterns, right? So I know that I'm going to probably have to build a data quality rule to standardize all these results and make sure that it's something consistent. So if I have to merge records or tie up records, I have those consistent values. Then, now that I kind of assess the current state of that health, I understand the keys, I can see current state data lineage, right? And the cool thing about this is that it's a dynamic interface in the sense that we knew current state assessments could have different types of audiences. It could be the database administrator, it could be the data consumers, it could be the architect. So we have a couple different views for someone to be able to look in there. If they're looking at it at an application level, right? What are the applications that are involved in this integration today? You know, is this something I can sunset? I can hover over the resource and I can see all the different applications. If I want a more detailed view, right, I can see, all right, I know that this is all existing in Oracle, and I can see that we got a view on top of that. I want to see if there's any integration logic. So I click on this little icon, and now I can see the business rules that were applied on this object. So having the ability to drill in and drill out, depending on the persona that's going to be accessing this information, is key. Because if I'm looking to replace this on-premise legacy solution, I want to see, you know, what's the join logic that they're using. You know, what are the business rules, right? Is there lookups that I need to replicate, and what are they looking up on? So you can get as detailed as you want, and you can check every step of the way. So it's not just a great tool for data architect to assess current state assessment, but it's also a great tool for the end users to trust adoption. They can see, oh, these are the right sources. I can see the business rules that you're providing. Great. The other key thing is the relationships of that data. So we think about data domains. You may want to know, I want to know every asset that has a social security number, right? We're getting audited. We're getting the GDPR audit. I can click into this data domain, and it's going to show me every object that has a social security number. But for this asset, I can see retail customer. All right, it has all these different data domains. I can see we have a enterprise data governance defined definition for this table. Excellent. I can see if there's any reports or views that are associated with it in terms of dependencies. And then I can see if there's anybody assigned to it as a data owner or a data reviewer or consumer there. So I get that 360-degree view of that asset. I can also collaborate on views. I can ask questions. Hey, you know, how often is this refreshed? You know, or there's inconsistencies. And if I have the rights, right, I can see a preview of the data. That's imperative for a developer. We try to divide risk so that way you can get the reward. As a developer, sometimes you don't get the username or the password to access the application. You're just told to do the build. And you'll see steps in here where we protect you from that level of access, but you're still able to do that data. So I can preview that data, and I can also provision a sample. So just like Amazon.com, right? I found the order that I want, and I can provision that data and dump it to my S3 bucket or Redshift to be able to view it and consume it. So now that I went through this life cycle, right, of all these different checks, this is the asset that I want. So then I go back and I simply just hit the plus sign, and I'm going to use this object. It's a trusted object. I click OK, and it brings me to our mapping palette. And the great thing about our mapping palette is that it is highly intuitive. It does use artificial intelligence and machine learning to help make suggestions throughout your integrations, but it's also designed in terms of an interface that allows you to be able to show to a person that maybe doesn't have a data development skill set, right? It views like a process flow, like a workflow that anybody can understand. And with naming conventions, you know, Braden and I talked earlier about let's have some fun names. I like fun names. but I also like transparency. And naming conventions are really critical in providing that transparency and that sustainability. So this is a source that I want to be able to leverage, this retail customer. And I see it's in my menu, and I brought it in from the EDC. And all I have to do is simply click on this little icon, and it selects from my inventory. So I pick it, and now boom, I already have my source that's set up in there as something I want to bring in. And like I said, with naming conventions, I typically, identify what it is, Oracle, and then I'll have a table name. And we have guides and standards for abbreviations and naming conventions as well. I typically put in a description, and then I'll typically date when I've updated that. And I'll show you guys that in an example. So that's how you easily get started. And then when I look at any suggestions, commonly used, what's next, I have all these pre-built transformations. And as a developer, there's so many times I could do an aggregation, or I could do a type 2, or I could do masking. Here, it's already pre-built for you. You don't have to figure out how to do it. It's available here, and it's available for drag and drop capabilities, and they're already pre-built to make your life a lot easier. And you can see there's tons of them. And if you don't know what to do or how to get started or how any of these work, all you have to do is hit the easy button. Right here is how I learned the tool. I clicked question mark, I go to the online help, and it brings up a help guide that not only shows me, did this appear, the help guide? Braden, are you able to see that, or is it still the?
Yeah, yep, we do see that.
So here this is the great thing about Informatica. You do not have to buy our product to learn to use it, right? All of this is public knowledge. As a developer, the big thing I look for is where can I get the most support? Where can I have a community that I can grow with and learn from? And the reason why we have such a big community is we publish all of this, right? If I want to know what transformations are, if I want to see examples here, what's an expression transformation? Why would I use it? It walks me through every step. Or even our pre-built functions, right? I know there's a function that I'm looking for. What are the different options that are available? I can quickly click on functions, and I can click on any one of these. And not only does it explain it to me, it gives me examples and outcomes that I know that I can use in my development lifecycle. So this is a great repository, and it really helps a lot of young developers get started and really breed that consistency. The other cool
Josh,
thing
let me hop in here real quick to catch everyone else up to speed that joined midstream real quick. Everybody, this is Howdy Partner. We're here with Josh from Informatica, who's demoing their intelligent cloud service that's available on AWS Marketplace. So we've been able to have a nice introduction from Stuti about Informatica and the power behind aggregating all the data from all these different data sources to create a beautiful picture and using and leveraging the information that you have and organizing it in a way that it can be used. And then, of course, Josh is going through and helping us understand, well, how can we get from that point A to point B of having a bunch of data from different sources to having it a nice, organized, one central location that could be leveraged. And so Josh was just showing us a little bit about that intelligence service. And so we're going to dive a little bit deeper. If you have any other further questions, feel free to throw them down into the chats, and Stuti and I will be sure to get them to Josh.
Thank you so much, Brandon. And two, I know some of this could be a lot for developers out there. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm happy to help. I want to set others up for success so we can all get to that next level. So I'm happy to help out, and I'm happy at this opportunity. Thank you very much. The other cool thing is I like to teach developers to fish, right? I can show them how to do it, but I want to help them set themselves up for success. And this easy button really does it. The online help will teach them. Marketplace is where they can see what others built and reuse that asset. We also have a success portal, which you can go and do training, on-demand training, watch demo videos, watch walkthroughs, or if there's any issues, contact support. So again, one-stop shop on that easy button. So just where we left off, we found the data asset that we wanted. We easily ported it in. And for simplicity's sake and time's sake, I'm just going to jump to some of these pre-built assets that I built and walk you through what it should look like. So I'm going to exit out of there. discard. And I have my assets already come up here. So one thing I want to kind of explain in a development hierarchy is that when you're developing, it's important to follow a framework. And in our framework, we have what's called a mapping. The mapping is the lowest, what I call repository object that groups source to targets. So for example, if you're bringing in Oracle data and you want to stage it in S3, right? Because it's not trusted yet, you haven't cleansed it, but you want to bring it into the ecosystem and have an understanding, right? I would do a mapping to bring that into the staging layer. And then I would do another mapping to transform that asset with other different tables to bring it into Redshift. So I have my cleansed data foundation. That step-by-step process can then be pieced together in what we call a task flow. And it helps me do checks and balances along the way to make sure every step of that process succeeds or notifications is sent to ensure that success. So I'm going to click into the staging layer of staging that Oracle asset. And as you can see, I follow a naming convention so that way it's transparent, right? What's my source? What's my target? You could have multiple sources. You could have multiple targets. You can piece them together. The other cool thing is if you know that the repository that you're querying from, right, is not set up the most efficiently and you're dealing with terabytes of data, you can push down to that repository and filter that data out so you're not having to pull the entire record set. The great thing about this interface is it looks at the key structure that's behind the scenes, and if it does have inferred key structure, I can do multiple objects, and it'll tell me what the relationships are that are inferred in that data set. So I don't necessarily have to know the entity relationship. As long as it's indexed in there, I can easily find it in my multiple object join. So when I talked about, I brought that asset in via EDC, our Enterprise Data Catalog, but I can also select it just from this dropdown. So all these selections are already set up by the administration. So as a developer, I don't have to know the password or the username on any of these. I can just pick my respective asset. Once I pick that asset, I can determine single object, multiple object, or query, and then I can select from this different panel here, and I can either scroll down and see all the different assets available to me, or I can do a metadata search here. Again, a simplified interface to make your development experience much easier. I can also preview the data, right? Let's say I want to see what, as long as I have rights, I can preview that data and see the data that I'm working with. I also have query options to filter that data set if I want to do incremental loading. I can sort it if I know I'm going to be doing joins later on, as well as different additional advanced options, pre and post SQL, and if the output's going to be repeatable. Now, it tells me the fields that are coming in, and this is a pretty cool feature because this is where our connector has value. We have hundreds of pre-built connectors, and if you've ever worked with SAP, which I worked with for many years, they have what's called an ERP system. It's used, it's a very sophisticated application that many companies use to maintain employee records, transactions, all of that. And the infrastructure behind that tool is not always easily interpreted, right? Back in the day, like many of the field names are in German, or there would be field names that wouldn't make sense. I can choose to bring in the technical field names, or I can use labels, right? And in that case with SAP, I would use the labels so I could see the business terminology and understand what that is. I also have the opportunity to edit the metadata. You know, many clients are taking these on-premise solutions to these cloud solutions, and sometimes either the data type's not compatible or the naming conventions aren't compatible. That gives me the opportunity to, you know, edit it and make it the way I want it to be ingested in my target. And if I screw up, I just hit refresh. It can bring all of those data sets back together. So a pretty simple way to bring in sources. If I wanted to bring in multiple sources where you would do a multiple object on this one is if it was in the same schema and I had key structures. But if I didn't have key structures, right, I would bring in another source, set it up the same way, and then I'd have the ability to do a joiner. And I can do a header and detail join to bring that data together. And it's really great when you're doing development, you want to think of it like a filter, right? You only want to do joins. You only want to do logic on your smallest sets of data. And too many times people will try to do everything in that source query. They'll want to, hey, I'm going to put all this logic in there and layer it in there. But then when they have to troubleshoot it, it's hard to navigate through. So here is kind of a simple, integration. I identify my target. I'm going to dump it to S3. I can determine all of my incoming fields. And I love this feature because when I'm bringing in multiple data sets, I can do bulk renamings in case there's any duplicate fields. I can pick name fields. So I say, well, I don't want to bring everything over. I'm going to go through and pick each name, right? Or better yet, I can do fields by data types or fields by text and patterns. So a variety of different choices for me to figure out how I want to bring that data set in. And then on my target, the cool thing here is I don't want to create the DDL for the target. I want to create it at runtime. So all I had to do, just like I did with my source, I pick my target, right? I identify that it's going to be single object, and then I select what I'm going to load that data to. And I have the option of doing existing, so that's going to show me the hierarchy of the structure of all the different files in S3, or I could just simply create a new at runtime. So really simplistic. We have that same feature for creating tables in there, and I also have the capability to insert, update, delete.
Josh, quick question. This is based off of the marketplace the product that you guys have on the AWS marketplace that you can spin up, right?
Yep.
Does that come with dummy data or like dummy sources that you can practice with, or do you have to connect up your own sources in order to practice with this kind of stuff?
That is a great question. We're not a repository business. We're not a data business. We have reference table data, but we really leave that to the experts, AWS. Sure. So if it's available in the cloud ecosystem, they can use that. What I've done as a developer is, still shamelessly, I used the AdventureWorks operational data store data set and loaded that into my S3 and then converted it to the AdventureWorks data warehouse. And I did that not because I love Microsoft. It's because it was already pre-built and it was a pattern that I saw consistently. And when I had to do delivery, I had to test, 10 different ETL tools, 10 different repositories to see, hey, this ETL tool is so fast, but the repository won't ingest it quick enough. So for many developers out there, that's a good starter data set to use. It's free to download, and then you can connect up to and dump it to the data set.
Awesome,
the other cool thing is, no worries, is we have trials on many of our connectors. So whatever data set you want to bring in or trial out, you can do it for free for 30 days. All right, so I built this data set, and now I want to load the target there. All I have to do is either hit run, or I can put it in what's called a task. So talking about the hierarchy, you have mappings and mappings where you put these objects together. A task is that shell that gives, hey, maybe I want to have parameters. Maybe I want to have different conditions. So I can click new mapping task. I've already have one created. And this is what the task will look like. So it tells me what.
Quickly chiming in with a quick question. So you actually showed a workflow, right? One-to-one mapping of source and target. So I was just wondering if you have like many-to-one mapping from multiple sources to one destination. Do we have that? Oh,
yeah, I'll show you that too here. I was, because like there was a staging layer here. I'll show you real quick. We have, as I said, in our pre-built assets, we have all these quick and easy things to help people get started, right? Mappings is where the developers typically chime in. We have something called a slowly changing dimension. If you're not familiar with slowly changing assets, as a data consumer, and I've had to do this many times, if Studi gets married, did her purchasing go down after or before marriage, or if she switches banks, what's the impact of that? That's where slowly changing dimensions can not only see historical pattern and compare it to future pattern, but also persist if a change didn't occur. It's a great tool for many cloud data foundations. So the cool thing is when you click create, it already lays out the infrastructure for you. What traditionally used to be a common complex situation, right, is now already set out. And all you have to do is set up the source and set up the targets. And I'll walk you through an example here, and it'll dive into that kind of multiple source use case. So here's where I built my slowly changing dimension, and this is for item. I'm going to close this one out. Back here. About that one. Bear with me. May have locked up my cache here. Oops. Log on. All right. So I was playing this, and I think I cache in. Bear with me 1 sec.
No worries, no worries.
And here we go.
And it looks like we do have a fun question here. So Deepak was explaining to us that Claire is like the ML AI that's kind of like Siri or Alexa. I have one in my room right now, and I'm sure I just triggered it. But a fun question here is that where can we hear Claire's voice? Does Claire have a voice?
No, not yet. Maybe that'll be coming down the roadway. It's more descriptive in the text. It makes suggestions. You see it as an undercurrent, but I wonder, that could be a good suggestion, Deepak. Maybe we should add that to the product management list. And my fear is here, I'm hoping they didn't shut down my environment behind the scenes. Just double checking quick. Okay, that's still up and running. And hold on 1 sec. Close out here.
No worries.
And so if you do have where you're doing a lot of extensive development, if anything comes up in terms of a bug, I typically just go and clear out my cache to make sure there's no residue.
I think we have a suggestion over the chat for making Claire's voice as Justin.
Yeah, I like that. That's good. All right, I'm gonna log back in here.
Yeah, no worries.
All right. Okay. Load. You should get to see the navigation over and over.
Looking promising.
Okay. So try this one more time here. Okay. Wait for it. If this doesn't work, I might just bounce back to the other multiple ones. I know it's
so kind of walk us what's happening here. Is that it looks like you're trying to collect to a source that may not have a connection anymore. This is actually a great time to kind of learn how to debug this kind of issue.
No, that is a great point. So with our infrastructure, because we have hundreds and hundreds of connectors, from all these different applications, we have AWS. So this is on our AWS pod, and right now I believe this one is on West Coast. Right now, I'm currently in the East Coast, and the sources that I'm connecting to are on another server. So when you're doing your setup, the best practice is to put the secure agent as close to that source application. So for me, for this specific example, I grabbed some data types, and so it's not on the same network. And if they're shutting down that pod, I'm losing that connection to that Oracle instance. So it's trying to read the metadata. So that's where secure agent architecture becomes critical in terms of that setup. But in our demo environment, we connect to everything. So I'm just going to show you the other one here. Click exit out of there. And this will show you how to remove noise as well. Explore. So let's say we landed that data, but we need to be able to cleanse that data, and we need different sources to be able to do that. And I'm praying he didn't shut down my pod. Hold on one sec here. Double check. Checking my AWS instance. All right, that's still up. I'm just going to try clearing cache one more time. Out of there. Any other questions while I'm troubleshooting this?
Yeah, let's see. I'm going to look through chat here. Stuti, did you have anything?
No, I was just going through the chat and looks like Deepak Ram is sharing some really great insights. There was a fun project with a motor maker in Detroit a couple of years ago to integrate Alexa and Claire. That got me wondering.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. 3 interactions deep. That would be pretty cool to be able to ask an Alexa, hey, like, what's up with the data? Where's it? All those other things. There's a lot of big possibilities to integrating Alexa. We actually had a partner that came on to help us teach about chatbots and Polys, or Poly, using Poly on a couple of our episodes, actually. So that'd be cool to have some cool collaboration there to give Claire a voice. So for those that have watched up to this point, I will say, like, everything that we've seen so far, I hope that you're super impressed with what Informatica has been able to build. And the reason is because all the things that you see as far as like the schema, the whole page that reviews the data source, the collaboration, all of that replaces hours and hours of conversation, sitting down with the data owner, maybe not even the data owner, maybe the person that just happens to be familiar with the data that may or may not have like the most up-to-date information regarding the data. So something that I really appreciate that as Josh was going through is that I remember going to my boss and thinking, okay, here's what we're trying to consolidate. Here's the overall goal. And we literally spent an hour talking about, should we use this field? And I would have to go through, run like 15 different queries to even determine if we should use the field. And here we are being like, you know what? It's like drag and drop. Let's look at it at a high level. Looks pretty good. We'll bring it in. I mean, it really is incredible how much time is being saved by using a tool like this.
Yeah, and these pre-built wizards, and I apologize, they did reboot my server behind the scenes, so apologies there. Everything's back up and running, but you can see that slowly changing dimension template that I showed you that's automatically created. For a developer, when there's multiple sources, right, they can just pick the connector, select the object. So this is what is staged in my S3 bucket, right? And this is the target that I'm going to. So this is what's on Redshift, and this is my dimension that I'm loading. So the reason why I have to have that as a source is I have to see, is there anything that's new or that it has to be updated? So here is where I can enter my expressions. So I want to enter different parameters in there. And the cool thing about entering the parameters is I can simply click whatever field that I want to add in. We'll just do test here. I pick the data type, all the different data types that are available. Type in 100, just for fun. And now I can go in and configure it. The expression transformation is huge because it's not an aggregation transformation. We have a designated one for that makes your life easier. But here you have all of your source fields that you can bring in, and then you can search from all those different functions. So when I showed you in that online help guide, the cool thing is I can just scroll by all of them, right? I can pick, maybe I want to do that. And then it gives me an example of how to do it. Or I can click this little easy button and it'll tell me that, hey, here's some specific examples. The other cool thing is the unit testing. So you think about when you write code, and I did it, I try to do common table expressions, anything to make my coding life easier, but I typically always had to run that entire code. Here, I can validate just on this expression, and it tells me that, hey, before I even run the whole entire mapping, this is already wrong. I need to input these fields. I need to find the corresponding fields and then insert them into these formulas. So right off the bat, I can unit test every step of the way, from the source connection to the transformation to even the different expressions that are in there. So the key thing, if you're familiar with slowly changing dimensions, is defining that natural key. So this sets up the infrastructure, and then I sort those assets. I join them together. So this could be, you typically want to join what we call header and detail level together. So commonly people would try to do, I want to bring 20 tables together in a join. We ask, are you bringing that together to really filter the result set, or are you bringing that together for a lookup? So I give you an example. If this data source that I was bringing in had a lot of codes that we didn't know, we need to translate that to something, I would bring in a lookup transformation to look up instead of doing that left outer joined, because this is a more efficient pull, because it's not something that's filtering my result set or doing something that's bringing back a comparable asset. It's translating any fields that are in my source that I don't feel are of value, or it requires tribal knowledge to be able to interpret that. When you bring that join together, and the cool thing is, right, master detail, you just drag the output and you drag the detail together and it pieces it together. The other cool thing is, if these two, master and detail, had duplicate fields, that's where when I have the incoming fields, I can quickly say, all right, rename them all, bulk rename a post or prefix. And I would say, actually, we did it on the detail side of it. You can see rename, whoops, bulk rename options were DM. So that this underscore, anything that was duplicated in my other source object, I was able to prefix with DM underscore. So on the detail side, you can see all of that bulk rename, and it was a prefix rename. And then you can see on the master side, it has that original name. So if you ever do run in where you're bringing multiple sources together, don't worry, you can easily rename them so you don't have that overlap. Then you go into join condition, and it's very simple. You can pick all the different choices. You can do simple, or you can do parameterized, and you simply select from the dropdown from the master table and the dropdown from the detail table. So very, very easy. Again, not using any code along this way. And then, hey, I want to add attributes to this dimension, right? Fully changing dimension attributes. And here, these formulas are already pre-built for you to create your start and stop dates, to create current flag, and you can add any additional expressions that you want. And then once you have your expressions, right, you can filter and determine, is this a slowly changing attribute? And so I bring in all the incoming fields, and then my filter condition is set on the flag. So if I know that I have a not equal to X flag, then I know where to route that. So when I create my joins to these target tables, you'll see it'll prompt me for, so let me bring in a target here so I don't screw this up. So I have a target. Whoops. There's my target. And when I have what we call a router transformation, when I do my joins from it, it's going to prompt me for which route do I want to choose. And in this case, bear with me here. Did I grab the wrong one? Should have gave me the default. Let me just double check. Output groups, if exists, insert, because I used them all.
So just to confirm, Josh, a router table, it sounds like, it's been a while, but if I remember correctly as well, it's kind of like an if-else statement.
Yep.
Kind of,
right.
Is that right?
Yep. So you can see here, sorry, I had to expand the plus sign. So this is how we pick all the different output groups, right? If I want to do the default, if I want to do if exists, so you can see how each one's routed to the decision that was made based on the formulas that we have. So if it's existing, right, I can do the new record insert. If it's a new record, I do a completely new insert. And this is the one where I would update the previous versions, deprecating, or sorry, sunsetting that record that's no longer valid in that fully changing dimension. So you can do multiple sources, you can do multiple targets, right? And every step of the way in each one of these transformations, you can validate it, right? Before I even run that execution, I know that this is going to be something that works before I run it. And then again, I put it in its mapping task shell. So just to show you back here, this is the mapping task shell. The reason why it's important, and just to show you what it looks like, is this is where I determine the execution engine, right? If I say I only wanted to execute on this secure agent group or this secure agent, I have that choice there. I select the mapping that I created. If it's highly parameterized, which our template is, this is where I would set all of my parameters. So if you think about moving from dev to test to prod, parameterization becomes critical because you don't want to constantly change your underlying sandbox environments to when it moves to production. You want to have that dynamically updated. And then also too, I can set the sequences in here. So I have a sequence generator. This is where I'm creating my primary key value in the dimension. So I start with 1. It knows, it's smart enough to know that, hey, we stopped at 253 as the unique key. I know the next load new record is going to be 254. So it handles that intuitiveness with you with our routing transformation. And then I can run it on a schedule. I can do notifications. Right now it's set at the organization level notification. But if I'm doing dev runs, I can do a failure to myself, a warning, or success. And then I have all the pre and post-processing commands. So a lot of different options for you to customize this flow. So that's to kind of show you a little bit more advanced mapping. And once I have, my staging, I have my target, I can now start piecing that together in what's called the task flow. And again, this isn't rocket science. We give you all these different options to set up the layout for your palette to do your task flow integration. I did mine sequential tasks with decisions. Why? Because especially when you're doing a cloud data warehouse load, you want to have the checks and balances along that process to ensure its success before you move to the next step. So you see here, I have, just like the transformations, I have all these different steps that are pre-built for me to just drag and drop into this task flow. And that staging, right, I select my data task. This is where I'm staging it to S3. Then I can make a determination, is it a success? And my decision looks at that previous task, and then from the tree, it tells me the output parameters. I could do everything from, failed source rows to end time to success rows, but in my case, I selected task status. So when task status contains success, I know I can move to the next step. If it doesn't, then I know I want to send a notification. So it gives me these different options to be able to send that notification. Then again, when I load to my data warehouse, right, I can do the same thing, select my data task, validate that it's success, right, or row count or whatever you want to do, and then move on to the next successful phase or send a notification. So you think how vast and big this can become to mimic a lot of validation process that people used to have to do manually. Now it's all automated in this interface. And the cool thing is, once you get used to building this, this is very much like our API integration interface. When you're connecting to Salesforce or when you're connecting to a website like Zillow.com, and I want to be able to load it into Salesforce, this task flow interface is going to look very similar to the cloud application integration. So as a developer, I can figure this process out, and then I can move to those more complex level integration. Any questions that come up so far?
No, well, yes, but Deepak is doing an excellent job. We wanted to get your take, Josh. Question that can be asked at the end here. Is this, we have Deepak's answer, but we want to hear yours. So can this be considered as an alternative to Glue? And, what would make me use this tool instead of other alternatives? So those are a couple of questions there let's just hear what you have to say.
No, that is an excellent question. So the way I view Glue is, for me, Glue helps someone get started quickly. It does rely a little bit on code there, but to me, I view it as an operational integration tool. It helps people it helps people exist in the AWS ecosystem. Where we complement Glue is this is an enterprise integration system, meaning that we can reach in all these on-premise ecosystems as well as any other hybrid ecosystem and bring all of those ecosystems together in one centralized tool. So where Glue succeeds is in the AWS platform. Where we succeed is not just on the AWS platform, but all these other peripheral applications of data that you have to bring into the AWS ecosystem. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay.
Josh, I would like to ask a quick question. So what are some of the challenges that you might have seen while people are using your amazing solution for doing all these kind of transformation workload? What are some of the common challenges that you have seen that analytics team face usually when they are actually trying to, extract some insights out of the data or even to transform these data sets? And how Informatica has actually helped them to encounter all these kind of challenges?
Excellent question. A great mentor of mine, Bhargav Mandava, who could be listening, he taught me from a very early age that don't try to boil the ocean in your integrations. When someone sees a tool like this and see how simplistic it is, they'll go right, and this is where I'm cleansing and masking sensitive data and bringing it in. They know what they want to do. They saw it in a demo, and then they go and try to build it right off the bat. And the one thing Bhargav taught me was, Josh, as you do this step-by-step build, right, make sure before you progress to the next transformation, just put in a temporary target here. So as I would do my build out after every transformation, I would just test the output, right? We are putting in preview. You see this? Where I can preview now in most of our transformations where I don't have to do that, making my life so much easier. But do it a step-by-step process as you're building. And if you know that the data source you're dealing with has inconsistencies or risk, go ahead and use the verbose integrations when you're running these. So just to show you what I mean by that is verbose is a feature on our tasks that allow you the ability to be able to, I'll show you right here, sorry, to be able to troubleshoot to see if the data points the problem. I'll give you an example. There's data types conversion from on-premise repositories that may not convert to a cloud repository. And maybe you didn't get a chance to do a data discovery and you're bringing it in there and you don't know why it's not working. I typically, when I start my development, I do verbose. It gives me row by row level detail of that data so I know if that data type is breaking the integration. But once I figure that out, I switch it back to standard because I want to make sure this performs at the highest level of performance. So what I say is start small and scale fast, because what you don't want to do is try to build it all at once, validate it, make sure you're comfortable with it, right? Because for many developers that come from a code-based environment, I will see them like in that simple mapping that we had for those two targets, right? I follow the KISS philosophy, keep it simple. And they would simply just have two transforms and they would put all of their business logic in a source query. That is not transparent at all. You want to make sure it's a step-by-step approach, because when you have to do an enhancement or a bug fix, all you have to do is go into whatever transformation that you have to make the update, make the change there, validate it, right? And then go ahead and do the execution. You can see this as a scalable approach. If I just kept it in the source SQL, or if I just leverage a SQL or Java transform, I lose that visibility, I lose that transparency. Does that answer the question? Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you. The other key thing, and Deepak loves this, he created this, is our data quality aspects, right? I talked to you guys about the ability to move data, to integrate data, yes, you could, in theory, create your own expressions to cleanse the data, right? But we made it a lot easier by leveraging data quality specifications and data masking capabilities. What this means is we want to empower the data stewards and the subject matter experts to be able to have the ability to put in their rules and standardizations, again, without having to know code. So in our data quality interface, we give them the capability to be able to go in there and create their own business rules. And how they do that, just to kind of show you here, do by asset type, and we'll go with a rule specification. So this is validating, is there PII data? And how they built it, look at the step-by-step flow, right? If I'm a data steward or a subject matter expert, these are the process flows that I want to see. I don't want to see nested SQL. I don't want to see a layer. I want to see a decision tree that I can clearly update and contribute to. And then once they create this decision tree, right, as a developer, I'm able to drag that rule specification in, right? Drag that object in, and then select it, determine my incoming fields that are going to run against that. And now I get to reuse that rule that they built for numerous applications. So if you think about, gosh, I got to standardize state on every source that comes in, I don't want to have to redo that every time. Oh, I'm just going to redo this. I'm going to reuse this in every one of my integrations. So again, especially for developers out there, sometimes we want to take it on all. This gives the appropriate interface for the appropriate user to help crowdsource, to help others contribute and have skin in the game, so it's not always on you. If it is, you got the tool set to do it. But if it isn't, you got the interface to set others up for success to help contribute. Any questions on that one? Okay. The other thing real quick I want to show you is, how do you set this up? Josh, I like this. I want to do a trial. How do I get started? Well, when you register on our site, it'll set you up with an org ID. And the way it works is this org ID is your unique record for your account. You can create suborgs. Why would I ever want to do that? Well, we have many customers that use our products for startup applications, right? They don't want to reinvent the wheel. They want to use our integrations, and then they leverage the suborgs to their customers, and they push everything from this master org concept. So it really helps those startup developers develop their own app and get started. And here's where I can kind of manage the set of notifications, as well as, where I'm going to store my credentials on. Then I also get to see what license I have available. But for many of the developers that want to get started, the first thing they're going to go to is the runtime environment. And all it takes is hitting download secure agent. And in 5 minutes, you have an executable engine and you're ready to get started in your development. Then you're going to set up your connectors, right? We talked about, hey, Josh, does it come with data sources? No, but you can easily set up all your different connections to be able to bring in that data. If there's a connector on here you don't already have, you can see all these pre-built connectors. You can simply go to our add-on connector page and search through our vast collection of pre-built connectors to make your life easier. And you can trial them. You can contact the help desk, and we can help get you started and get you moving on. Or if you're feeling more adventurous and want to dip your toe into API integration, you can develop what we call Swagger files and start bringing in maybe something that we don't have a pre-built connector to, and you want to bring in that website data and integrate it. We give you the capabilities to develop your own Swagger files as well. And then also too, we have the standard foundation of setting up user groups for you to help you get started. User roles, to assign all the different roles and responsibility. Again, divide and conquer. But you can ultimately add your own role. The other cool thing that I want to see is the monitoring capability, right? If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. The monitoring screen I love because you can quickly see what was executed, right? Oh, that's how long it took. Okay, how many rows were processed? I'm going to click in there. Great. Success rows. Perfect. Was there any errors? What was the error message? And I can download further detail on that. So you get that insight. But the other cool thing is well, it failed. Why did it fail? I can hover over it. It gives me a message. That's hard to read. I'm going to click into it, and I can see, I executed it on the wrong agent that didn't have privileges. So I quickly make that change, and now I know I executed correctly because I executed on the right secure agent. So again, a highly intuitive solution that helps you easily get started, but gives you feedback as you're doing your development lifecycle. And these palettes are just so great to kind of shift, to reorganize. You can copy and paste these objects. You can cut them out. You can zoom in. You can zoom out. So very easily navigatable solution. And there's also, when you go to those marketplaces, pre-built bundles to help get you started. So a plethora of options for you to help you on your journey. Any additional questions?
No, just a comment that's incredible. Just so many different features in one compact console. It's great.
Excellent. Yeah, the one thing I wanted to show you too is we talked a lot about the data integration. Are you able to see my screen, streamlined data integration? So we talked just about data integration. And as developers, I know many of you are probably dipping your toes in streaming, API integration as well. The great thing about our platform is you can do all of this on one single platform. And it's not that you have to buy everything at once. As your use cases grow, as your skill set grows, you can easily add on these features to really help get everything to the AWS ecosystem. So that's what I had for demo. If there's any other questions, I can kind of go in and show some more. How are we doing on a time check?
We're good on time. If that's where you want to end it, we can end it there. If you wanted to stick around for a couple more minutes, we could as well. Chat, if you have any questions for Josh, he's here. As you can see, he's very concise and in his explanations. If there's something that you want simplified in terms of ETLs, data, and anything like that, Josh is your man.
Yeah, I'm here to help. The one quick thing I will show, let's just do trial and error live on as we go. Maybe I shouldn't.
It's always a good idea, right?
Yeah, right? You know, camera's not on here anymore, is she? So the one thing I will show, and I didn't look at this data set before I did it. I just kind of wanted to show you the multiple objects capabilities because I did love this feature. So I'm selecting multiple objects. As long as it's indexed underneath, it should tell me the relationships. So I hit add source. Let's say I want, and again, I should have profiled this data before I'm going in there randomly. And then I'm going to add existing relationships, related objects, right? So what that's doing is, you know, anytime you go into a repository, you can see inferred relationships. We're bringing that in with our connector. So I picked the one that doesn't have any relationships, or it doesn't have an underlying key structure. I'll try the AWS Redshift. Yeah. So I go in here. Oops. And I know I have it on my instance. Bear with me. Should close some of these. Discard. Sorry, real quick. All right. Discard. Okay. So expand my palette. Add source object. Hopefully there's something in here that has underlying key structure. Try that. Probably not. If there was an underlying key structure, they would see all the tables there. I think a great example is that AdventureWorks operational data store. So for example, when I had to do all these demos on different ETL tools, different ecosystems just to prove performance, it was great because that data set had the inferred key structure. So I know all of the objects that I selected would inherently join to this table. So it really helped because it was under the same schema. I didn't want to create 5 different source objects to bring it in. It was able for me to quickly be able to bring that in there. I apologize, I didn't have that readily available. But those are some.
Okay, you took a risk. I like
it. The other thing too I wanted to show is the aggregator transform. Again, this is where we kind of divide and conquer. You'll see that because I used to do kind of a duplicate check prior to us having the data quality transform to check duplicates. But when you're doing aggregations, right, this transform, if I want to drag it in, I can simply drag it in, and it'll replace, simply line up right there, which is wonderful. I go into the aggregator. I know that I want to group by, let's say, unique keys. I want to make sure there's no duplicate natural keys. Customer key is my key. And then I add the expression. We're going to say, do count. That's the other thing. I'm so big on conventions. I always suffix my metrics with the measurement, either a count or a dimension or a weight or a currency. So that way it's clear and transparent to that data analytics community. And then all I do, actually, wait, I'll bring it in the formula. Built-in functions, aggregate, I'll summarize for me. And then now I go to my field, highlight this, and just hit add, validate, boom, right? I did my unit testing. The other cool thing is, you can bring in your user-defined functions. You can bring in system variables, right? This is great for error handling, load handling, being able to know when it ran, what the task name was, when it started, or doing incremental loads. Hey, I only want to load what is new records. I can use an audit field or an audit date to be able to do that. We also have mass ingestion capabilities right now for Oracle, where, hey, I only want to bring in change data from Oracle. We can load that in to your AWS ecosystem. So a lot of different options for you to play around with. You can also leverage parameters as well. So I have that in there, and that's my aggregation transformation. The one thing that might be, if you guys have me back, I would love to go through, I didn't have it ready for today, but the structure parser capabilities, to me, that was huge. And again, I harken back to the AdventureWorks operational data store. The way Microsoft built that is they have structured data with partially unstructured data. So if you want to bring in demographics information, it's in a column that is in XML format. So for you to be able to read that, you have to parse that XML format. And I was able to easily do it with ISD structured parser. So all I did was did that intelligent structure discovery, brought this transformation in, routed my XML column to that file, and then brought it back together with my relational file and load that data. So it's great. It's great data to play with if you're really trying to learn your data set. I actually might be able to bring it up here real quick.
And as a tangential question, Josh, you talked about the naming convention of you're naming like the source and like the target, the way that you guys, the way that you tend to use it. Would you classify that as a Hungarian notation?
I'm not familiar with what that is.
I'll post that in the chat. So okay. It sounds very similar, right? Where the Hungarian notation is where you're naming the variable or function where it indicates the type or the kind or its intent. And so I think an example in C# was like the most recent time, and that was even like a couple of years ago, where you would name a variable string or str underscore home address or something like that. So it seemed a little close to what you were saying of how you would go naming convention for your targets and your sources.
No, that's I use kind of the English component structure. Like every field that I name, I have what the subject is, what the modifier is, what the class word is, and you can see my examples for qualitative fields, right, and for quantitative fields. I always have these end in a suffix, just like with these class words end in a suffix. I don't do it to be restrictive. I do it to be transparent, because the more transparent I can make it to the end users, the better that they're going to be able to adopt it and trust that data set. So, and it also, that's the other thing, Studi. You mentioned, what are some problems with analytics? Data governance, right? You can see the undercurrent of data governance that we have. I would get with sales and they'd be like, it always come up with like account ID, right? Well, account ID had their own ID and operations had their own. I would use that subject to help, help mitigate any disputes between sales, operations, and finance. Because it said, okay, that's going to be the sales account number, right? This is going to be the finances account number. And it helped me really have that clear delineation to what that object was, because a lot of times it was as different data sets. So if you get into a situation where you're starting your development, and let's say you started with finance first, you did all your data sets, then sales comes in and says, nope, we call it something else, right? You can always harken back to the structure, and it really helps diffuse a lot of those battles early on in the development discussion. Great question, though. Yeah, I'll Google that, Braden, afterwards. I can't believe I didn't know that off the top of my head. Real quick, I just wanted to show an example of the intelligent structured discovery. I don't have my secure agent up and running, but I should be able to show you it quick. You can see my environment has a pretty strict naming convention.
I'll say it's impressive how disciplined you are. It's very easy to forget, especially when you're doing like a POC development. As it typically starts out, you just type in some kind of simple phrase like, "Hey, home address," question mark, right? But it seems like you really stick to it, even with even the smallest projects.
Right. Yeah, and it's just because again, I'm not trying to hide anything. I want everyone to keep moving the ball forward, and you can see. Like, let's say you have a sample response or an XML. This was a sample response for the AdventureWorks underlying infrastructure. I put it in there. I discovered the structure. It gave me the relation output, right? It was able to determine the field structure and the hierarchy in there. So that way, when I put it in my data flow set, and I'll show you it here, I was able to run the data that was structured and run the data that was partially structured and join it back together to get that holistic data set. That's huge because I'm seeing XML and JSON type data sets more and more, because I think a lot of people were pushed to do that years ago because of repository constraints, I'm thinking. But when you do that, it's hard to marry that data back together without complex code. Here, we simplified it. I selected that discovery parser. I told it that it's going to output at relational. I could do JSON. I could do I could do Parquet. I could do ORC. All these different options, right? I told it clearly what my incoming field was, right? This is the other cool thing, the pass-through feature. So that XML structure did not have a unique identity field, and what happens is when you look at the source field that you're bringing in, just to show you here quick. Sorry, I could go on forever about this. I apologize. Demographics, as you can see, is a text field. Look at that length. I know that's an XML structure, right? I know when I profiled that in my data discovery, I don't have a unique ID. I need that business entity ID to be able to bring that parsing structure back together with it. The cool thing about our transforms, especially the pass-through, is I can bring in structured and partially structured data. So when I picked my incoming field, I brought in the unique key. So when I had my output, right, with that field mappings, I know that I'm going to bring back the parse structure, right? And then the output, when I'm in the join, just to show you here, is I can then join on business entity ID and the XML business entity ID. So even if you're dealing with the different data types, and especially the complex ones, don't fear. You can still marry it together and bring it through to dump it to your ultimate target. So again, that was a nice thing that I don't think we advertised a lot. And even here, I just did, a bunch of different formulas to be able to standardize it and do checks, as well as indicate the load ID throughout the process. So a lot of fun stuff that you guys can do that can make your life easier. Don't reinvent the wheel. Take advantage of what we built. Make your life a lot easier. Any other questions came in during that?
I don't think so. Stuti, anything from you?
No, I guess we actually went extra ahead and an extra mile to kind of explore more features and functionality. And that was my question. I think the structured discovery is pretty amazing. The way the hierarchy is kind of auto-detected is pretty cool feature.
Yeah, it will make your life so much easier. And for me, I always want to keep moving forward. And a lot of this stuff, I think people have already done in past lives, right? They've done it with different integrations. That's the way Informatica felt. We felt that we had to help people move forward. So let's give them templates, right? We have, just so you can see here, in my, whoops, got to go up one, in my data quality assets, right? All of these different pre-built reference tables for you, everything from color to date to ISO codes, and for you to be able to modify. And what does this mean? This means that, hey, when data comes in, if it has any of these types of, structures, right, convert it to that. So that standardization becomes inherently easier with a lot of these pre-built reference tables, as well as numerous pre-built rules that are available for you out there as well. So a lot to take advantage of, a lot to help get you started, a lot to help you cleanse that data foundation. So I'll stop sharing now unless there's any other questions.
I believe that's it. Josh, thank you very much for joining us and sharing everything that you know about your Informatica's and Cloud Intelligence Service. So for everyone that's been with us the whole time, we appreciate you coming. Join us next week, Monday, and we have another show, same time, 2 p.m. Pacific time. But until then, Josh, we have a special way of signing off on this show. So we have three phrases that you get to choose from in order to be able to sign off. Happy trails. Y'all come back now. And giddy up. I think that's what it is.
I like happy trails. I think that was Will Rogers' fame, so I'm not that old, but happy trails. Thank you so much for the opportunity. You can see I'm passionate about it, and I'm just so thankful to talk to the community and you guys as well. Stay safe.
All right. Take care, everybody. Thank you so much.